Brands Hatch hosts the final round of the 2017 Dunlop Endurance Championship. Two heavily anticipated into-the-night races will bring down the curtain on an incredible year. The title race is going down to the wire. In the endurance category, MJC Furlonger's Class 1 Ferrari 458 won at Silverstone last time to hold on to the points lead. Former champion Whit Gamsky and teammate Ross Wiley will take heart from the fact that this too was a night race. However, they come into the weekend with the most slender of advantages. Just a single point adrift are Simon Rudd and Tom Barley. Aboard their team-hard Ginetta G55, they've taken a glut of Class 3 wins and have the overall title in their sights. But they, in turn, are only 2 points clear of their own teammates, Darren Lewis and Tommy Knight. And they were class winners when Britcar visited Brands Hatch earlier in the season. And it's almost as close in the sprint category. The track-focused team of Sean Cooper with father and son Rick and Brad Neverson are at the top of that table, but only by 3 points. The RM Motorsport pair of Roland Hopkins and Matthew Boyce could pull off a giant-killing act in their VW Golf if they can score well within their own category, Class 5. While the Tockwith Motorsports pairing of Ed Moore and Marmaduke Hall and the Bespoke Cars duo of Dave Bennett and Marcus Fothergill still have an outside shot at the title. The sights and sounds of GT cars racing into the night, 2 championship titles at stake, and changeable weather on the horizon. It has all the makings of a dramatic season finale. A greasy circuit and light rain awaited the drivers as they headed out for the 30-minute qualifying session. Javier Mortheo set the early benchmark in the Nilgana Motorsport Mosler. But midway through the session, Callum Lockie then took the FF Course Ferrari to pole by just over 1/10 of a second. It was short-lived as Rob Weldon put the Raw Motorsport Radical to the top of the times, albeit by just 32 thousandths of a second. Meanwhile, the Endurance Championship leaders Gamsky and Wiley had to settle for 4th place, with the Class 2 Ferrari 458 challenge of Bon Grimes and Johnny Molan in 5th. The Invitation Ginetta of Black Mamba Racing, driven by Andy Dimitru and Jade Kruger, was next, with Darren Lewis and Tommy Knight taking an invaluable bonus point for Class 3 pole in 7th. So just 6/10 of a second covering the top 4. Further back, the Tockwith Motorsport Ginetta of Ed Moore and Marmaduke Hall was the fastest sprint class entry in 13th.
It started off just mild drizzle, slightly damp, so we went out on some used wets. The lap time started coming down, and then the rain just came down, and the lap times were starting to rise. So I came back in after sort of 10 laps. We put some new sets on, new set of wheels on, went out and did a couple more laps, got into the top 2. Swapped drivers with Rob. I think Lockie just stole pole for a few laps, and then we managed to steal another hundreds off Lockie to start pole for the 3rd time.
There are a few corners that are particularly tricky when it's greasy and wet here, aren't there?
Yeah, paddock's interesting. Clearways is probably the worst. The last corner, there's just absolutely no grip whatsoever. The car is completely sideways for most of that corner. Yeah, under braking the car's fine, but it's such a tricky circuit in the wet, and there's no real runoff except for paddock, and you don't really want to come off there.
As the light faded and with the rain now much heavier, the teams went back on track for a 30-minute familiarisation session. Javier Mortheo won a spectacular season finale here last year when he and co-driver Manuel Centrano took victory in a 3-hour into-the-night race by just half a second.
We love this race. It's always been my favorite race in Britcar calendar. Brands Indy and at night is such a fantastic event to drive in. And yeah, after last year's battle and win, we had to come back to try to fight for the win again. And the car is very difficult to drive on the wet, as you can imagine, with no drive rates, but it's more fun. And we're looking to use that fun to try to fight for the win.
Track Focused is an experienced endurance racing team, but drivers Brad and Rick Neverson have the chance to wrap up the sprint class title in what's their first full season of racing.
To be top of the table going into the last race is literally an absolute dream, and we're just going to do the best we can, hopefully get a couple of firsts and still be at the top by the end of the weekend. I've never done a night race before, but I did do some night testing yesterday, which I absolutely loved. I think I prefer the night to the day, racing-wise. I find the awareness is a lot easier because there's such big lights on the fronts of the cars. You know what's around you. Even if you can't necessarily see its lights, you can see your shadow being reflected and stuff like that. So I think it's more awareness that I find the better part of it.
Their closest rivals for the title, RM Racing, had a difficult start to the weekend. They had to miss qualifying due to damage incurred by a crash in practice. But with the exception of a non-start at Silverstone, they've been one of the most consistent teams on the grid in what is also their first season of racing.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Both Matt and I are first-time car racers, and it's been an uphill battle, I'm not going to lie, but it's been an exciting uphill battle. We've learnt a lot. Hopefully we can take that into next year and improve on it. But the most important thing for us is to have fun.
And it proves you don't have to have a big GT car to go for the title.
Absolutely. We're a real budget outfit. We'll invest some more this year. But who said budget racing isn't fun?
The difficult track conditions caused several drivers to go off the road during the session, including Manuel Centrano in the Mosler. Some cleaning up to do, with the race now imminent. The first race of the weekend would be a 50-minute sprint, with Stefano Lini starting the Radical from pole, Callum Lockie alongside in the Ferrari, and Javier Morcillo starting third in the Mosler. The two front row starters left everyone in their wake as the rolling start got underway, and Tommy Knight was straight down to business in the Team Hard Ginetta, passing two cars, including the championship-leading Ferrari, into Paddock Hill Bend. Straight up to fifth place for the title contenders as Knight charged into the spray and up Hellwood Hill. Pole sitter Lini had managed to fend off Lockie for the lead, with Morcillo holding third and Bon Grimes up to fourth in the Class 2 Ferrari. Meanwhile, a cautious start for Wittgamski in the number 43 MJC Furlonger Ferrari, slipping from 4th to 10th by the time the pack arrived at Graham Hill Bend for the first time. Riding with Javier Morcillo at the end of lap 1, the onboard view giving you a sense of the commitment being shown by these skilled drivers in just about the most difficult conditions you can get. Of the three Endurance Championship leaders, the Ginetta of Knight was in the best position, 5th and leading Class 3. But title rival Tom Barley wasn't far behind, gaining a place to run 8th at the end of the opening lap. And a good early race battle was developing between the Whitebridge Motorsport Aston, the Jeff Still Racing BMW and the WDC Racing McLaren. While Sprint Championship leader Sean Cooper regained a place on Sarah Moore's smart car into turn 1. The Endurance Championship leaders were amongst the first to pit, with Wittgamski handing over to the rapid Ross Wiley. And in from third place, the number 5 FF Course Ferrari, after Bon Grimes had managed to find a way past Javier Morcillo. On the other side of the pit wall, the safety car had been deployed. The number 57 Moss Motorsport BMW off at Druids after Adam Hayes had suffered contact. Shortly after the restart, another crash triggered a second safety car period, and this time everyone dived into the pits for their mandatory stop, including the track-focused Porsche Cayman of Sean Cooper and Brad Neverson. The Moss Motorsport BMW had recovered to the pits, running last but still in the race, with Adam Hayes handing control to Tom Howard, while the sister car, the Class 3 BMW 1M, was in contention for an overall podium, as team boss Mike Moss gave way to Kevin Clark. Then a pivotal moment as the safety car period turned into a race stoppage to allow for the recovery of Tom Barley's Ginetta, the team's second in the championship, out after clipping a back marker and being sent into the barriers. Thankfully Tom was okay, but the team's title aspirations had taken a huge dent. The red flags had come when some were mid-stop and others out of position on track, and with the timing screens having been wiped, the decision was taken to discard the first part of the race and restart behind the safety car. With Pro GT driver Johnny Molam now in the number 5 Ferrari and the field bunched up, FF Course had a real opportunity to win the race. A spin for the Black Mamba Racing Ginetta just before the restart though, proving how slippery it still was. One team that had lost a lot of places during the reshuffle was the Team Hard pairing of Tommy Knight and Darren Lewis, but the latter quickly went on the attack, passing the WDC McLaren for 13th place. The number 7 FF Course Ferrari now led, but gentleman driver David Mason was being reeled in by Rob Weldon, determined to get the Radical back up front. On its Britcar debut, the number 78 Barwell Audi R3 of Sam Dehaan was up to 3rd place, but would quickly slip back down the order. And with the rain a great leveller, the Class 5 Synchro Motorsport Honda of Alan James and Martin Byford was flying along in the top 10. Back in the pits, a sorry sight as the full extent of the damage to Tom Barley and Simon Rudd's Ginetta became apparent. Meanwhile, their title rivals continued to march up the order. Darren Lewis passing the Mosler, now driven by Manuel Fontrano, which had already lost time with an additional unscheduled pit stop. Ahead, the Raw Motorsport Radical now snatched the lead from the 7 Ferrari, with the 43 Ferrari of Ross Wiley also coming through to take second. David Mason ultimately heading for an extra stop of his own that would drop the septuagenarian to the back of the field. And there was a second off for Black Mamba Racing, but this time the Andy Dimitru Jade Kruger-driven Ginetta would be heading for retirement. The track-focused Porsche Cayman was still ticking along nicely, running second in Sprint Class 3 behind the Porsche of Marcus Fothergill and Dave Bennett, and with their closest title rivals RM Motorsport having retired the VW Golf. The Ferrari of Johnny Molam had taken half a dozen laps to move into the lead, passing the Class 1 cars of Ross Wiley and Rob Weldon, the latter actually dropping to 4th after a spin in the Radical. And candidate for stars of the day remained Synchro Motorsport, the Honda Civic now up to 7th place, ahead of some much more powerful machinery. Darren Lewis was also impressive, getting the team-hard Ginetta back into 6th place and second in Class 3, behind the number 18 Moss Motorsport BMW, which was now 3rd after the Radical's retirement. But after mastering the toughest of conditions, victory in the first race of the weekend went to Johnny Molam and Bon Grimes in the Class 2 FF Course Ferrari 458. Second, and with an all-important Class 1 win, were title contenders Gamsky and Wiley. Third, and winning Class 4, the BMW of Moss and Clark, while the restart allowed Howard and Hayes to get back into contention. Surprise winners of the sprint category in 5th place overall.
All Bon's great work got undone by that final safety car. He had 2, I think. And then obviously I got in, and then it went red, and I was behind Ross Wiley in the GTE and also in the Radical, both of which are much quicker cars than this. But in the wet, I can just use, it's a very drivable car, this, and they were a little bit skatey with traction. I optimised the traction, turned the traction control off actually, because I was finding I was able to actually drive a lot quicker with it off, and just skated the car around, got past Ross. He was quite fair actually, and then the Radical did me a favour because he would have been tough to pass. He actually spun coming out of clearways, so got into the lead, and then they were just giving me the gaps, and I was just thinking all along, try and do what I keep telling Bond to do, just keep your head down, don't lose focus, just keep pushing. Took a few risks in traffic just to keep that gap. So pleased for Bond to be able to come and have, I think you were saying it's 6 overall race wins, more than anyone else, even in Class 1. So tribute to Bond that we managed to do that, because obviously I can't do it on my own, so he's done a fantastic job.
You know, we love this car in the wet, and we've been praying for a bit of rain, so we were very pleased when we saw the forecast this morning. Thought this might give us a chance at a podium, we thought. So to get the overall win was, you know, really a bit of luck in that, but I think to Johnny to come out right behind 2 Class 1 cars and overtake them on the track, I think that he deserves a lot of credit for that, and it's really, really impressive. And I think that's where, you know, the experience that Johnny's got really comes into its own night races in the rain, I think.
Adam, I can't imagine you could see a great deal at the start of that race.
No, it was a bit difficult to start with. The vision was poor, but after the first couple of laps it's all settled down, and it was okay. The grip was quite good.
Did you sort of build up as it went along? Did you have to be a little bit cautious for the first few laps?
No, I sort of went for it straight from the off, picked a few cars off virtually straight away, and then just settled down to a reasonably steady pace, which has paid us good stead.
Do you have to be cautious with the braking points and turning points? Obviously they're changing the wet, but I guess you can't visualise the markers like you can in the daylight.
Oh no, 100% not, and especially with conditions like this, they're constantly changing, so every lap you're changing your braking position, changing where you're turning in, and as well with the tyres degrading and your fuel level getting lower and lower, it's really hard conditions to drive in, but it's just good fun really.
Morning on the final day of the championship. A late finish for the teams following the previous night's race, and for some there had been little or no sleep at all. A particularly difficult night for Team Hard as they sought to rebuild the number 24 Ginetta after their title challenge came off the rails with a hefty crash.
Yeah, massive disappointment for us. We came here hoping to really win the championship, that was our target. And just an unfortunate, I think, racing incident into turn one, a little bit of contact at the back of the car. Next thing I know, I'm in the wall. So yeah, very unfortunate.
The team's done a mega job to get the car back together. They've worked all night, haven't they?
Yeah, just phenomenal. We cannot thank them enough. We owe them a beer. 4 guys in particular have worked non-stop overnight, finished the car 5:30 this morning, and we just put it P1 in this morning's practice. So we are over the moon and very grateful. We get another go today.
Yeah. Simon, yesterday aside, it's been a fantastic season for you. To get to this point, still with a great chance of winning the championship coming into the weekend in your first season in Britcar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to be in the shootout for the last round, I think it shows how well we've done, how well the team have done, and how much we've come along this year. I think people have looked at us as the car to beat, which is good. I think we've had our fair share of bad luck, but that's racing. We still have a very, very, very small chance of taking the overall championship and class championship, but I think we're just going to go out there and have some fun today and see what we can do from the back.
After finishing second in class and 6th overall the previous night, their Team Hard stablemates Darren Lewis and Tommy Knight had now overtaken them for second in the championship.
We'd never ever thought that we'd be in the hunt for the overall title. The Class 1 cars are just so quick. But to be in the hunt for that as well as the Class win, it's been a phenomenal year, really good. We've had no real dramas with the car, reliability problems, we've had no crashes, touch wood. So it's all been really good.
You're building up a bit of a rep as a demon starter this year.
Yeah, I've had some really good starts. I think Donington, I went from 12th to 5th through the Criners, which was quite a good start. And everyone just seemed to be messing about, and I thought, I don't know what's going on here. I'm going straight around the outside, but yeah, I think my starts come from, I used to do oval racing, and you start at the back and you've got 30 cars to pass and you've got 20 laps to do it, so I think that's where all that comes from.
Having arrived at Brands Hatch with a 1-point lead in the championship, a class victory in race 1 meant that MJC Furlonger now had an 8-point advantage. Not that it had been plain sailing.
It was extremely difficult. Visibility was bad, the spray, and where we took the tear off from the windscreen, the windscreen was hazy, so let alone it was the spray and everything else, the windscreen was blurry and white. Car wasn't getting hot, and when I did my stint, I was watching Ross going around, I was having heart attacks. I mean, how he did it, I don't know.
One of the teams that impressed in the wet was the Maximum Group. Ollie Taylor and British touring car driver and team owner Stuart Lines finishing second in class with their rapid Seat Leon TCR.
Yeah, it's good. It's like a touring car for the masses. I think the average driver will get in that and have a real good fun. The real British touring cars that we all have to drive are a bit more complicated, a lot harder to drive, but this, I think, it's an enjoyable thing, and it's perfect for stuff like the Britcar and all-comers races. You can race it anywhere, really. The standard of the driving here at this Britcar is fantastic. There's so many good drivers, and I think they're doing such a good job now with all the grids got bigger, and it's just an enjoyable weekend for us all. We want to do a bit more. We want to do probably some 24-hour racing, but we will be at Britcar next year. Hopefully we can get a couple of drivers that want to commit to the whole season. We need people to come and drive our cars for us because we think we can do a decent job.
So after 7 rounds, 14 races and 8 months of competition, it all boils down to this one race. The cars heading around on the formation lap, the grid based on yesterday's race results. So it is Bonamy Grimes who is on pole position with Gamsky, championship leader, second on the grid. Here's the view from Ollie Taylor's Seat. He's going to be starting 10th on the grid in the Maximum Group TCR spec car. They climb up Halewood Hill, trying to generate some heat in the tyres, and in the background there's a spin look on this formation lap. That is one of the Ginettas. It's number 25, Jacob Jackson, who's had a spin. Hopefully he doesn't get beached. He gets off the curbs and will rejoin, I don't think with any damage, but a hairy moment showing with these cold temperatures just how difficult it can be on cold tyres. On board with Brad Neverson, who's going to start the Porsche Cayman, leading the Sprint Championship. We've got another car stopped to the foot of Howard Hill. This time it's number 33, Callum Hawkins-Rowe in the Team Hard Ginetta. He and Angus Dudley have been real stars this season, the teenagers, in their first year of endurance competition. But it looks like they're going to miss this race as the marshals push the car out of the way. So we will get a start this time around, a rolling start. Bonamy Grimes on pole position. The white bonnet is the championship leader, Wittkamski. He's outgunned though by Mike Moss in the BMW. He's gone straight into second place. Then it's Stefano Lini, and the Radical has got ahead into third place as well. On board with Tommy Knight, who gains a place and loses one. That's to Tom Howard in the Moss Motorsport BMW. Yesterday's sprint class winners. They went either side of Wittkamski's Ferrari. But it's the BMW that came out on top. So once again, the two Moss Motorsport cars running well in different classes, but both of them running in the top 6 here. The pack makes its way downhill into Graham Hill Bend for the first time in the races. Javier Mortheo guns it around the outside of 1, 2, 3 cars. Fantastic move in the Neil Garner Motorsport Mosler. That is a front-running car, but they had problems in yesterday's race, so he's going to have to carve his way through the field. That's in gaining another place on Chris Murphy's Whitebridge Motorsport Aston Martin. So fantastic start to the race here for him. Fantastic start as well for Mike Moss there, former production class champion in Britcar, and he is right on the tail of Bonamy Grimes here, who's struggling to get the tyres up to temperature on the Ferrari. So the BMW hanging on to him at the moment as they climb uphill. The Class 2 Ferrari just about a car length clear as they break for Druids and make their way around the right-hander. The Class 3 BMW hanging on to the Class 2 Ferrari. And here is number 15, Ed Moore in the Ginetta, one of the sprint class frontrunners up the inside there of Alan James in the Synchro Motorsport Honda. He and former Britcar champion Martin Byford having a great day yesterday, as here comes Javier Mortheo again up the inside of Clint Bardwell's Jeff Steele-run BMW with a superb bit of outbraking on the way into the left-hander. On board with Javier as he gets another place. Alan James is a fine driver, but that Honda is no match for the power of this Class 1 Mosler, which is absolutely slicing his way through the field. You get the sense that the Spaniard is enjoying driving this car, and the challenge that lies ahead to get up to the front runners. He's going to gain another one on the exit there to Clareways. Sparks fly in the background. That's the Radical of Stefano Lini in third place, closing up to the two leaders. Then in fourth place, Tom Howard doing a fantastic job in the Class 4 BMW. Fifth and sixth, Tommy Knight in the Ginetta, and right behind him with the onboard camera, this is Ollie Taylor in the Maximum Group Seat. Back down the hill into Graham Hill Bend, through the left-hander and working away at the wheel. Ollie Taylor doing a fine job here. He and Stuart Lyons having a very good top 10 result overall yesterday, and second in their class. A bit of a lock-up there for Alan James. That's Clint Bardwell's BMW going up the inside of number 7 Ferrari. Also coming from the back of the field is Callum Lockie, multiple Britcar champion. Steering clear of all the dramas, Brad Neverson here. Aboard the Porsche Cayman, run by Track Focused, still leading the sprint category championship, but still only by 1 point from RM Motorsport. And there's the Endurance Championship leader, number 43, the Ferrari of Wittkamski, though he's overtaken around the outside through Clareways by Mike Sellers Porsche and Jade Kruger in the Black Mamba Ginetta. Number 22 from the back of the field gets past as well. So that is now down to 16th place for the car, which, remember, started near the front of the grid, and he's got more cars queuing up behind him. That Ferrari does not like the cold weather. It takes a while to get it up to temperature. Witt knows this, though, and he knows he's got plenty of time in the 2-hour race. Somebody who's not hanging around, though, Javier Mortheo up from 19th to 7th, and that's a change of lead. Suddenly, the Radical has gone first, so he'd already dispatched of the BMW of Mike Moss. And Stefano Lini, with that move at Paddock Hill Bend, getting ahead of Bonamy Grimes, leads. He is in a Class 1 car, so Bonamy and Mike both continue to lead their classes 2 and 3 respectively, but are now down to 2nd and 3rd overall. Javier Mortheo in 7th place then, 12 positions gained in the first few laps of this race, getting ever closer to the tail now of Ollie Taylor. They're all lapping the RM Motorsport VW Golf, which is trying to win its own class, and you've also got Tommy Knight's Ginetta just ahead. Mortheo comes through, there he is, flashing past. Unstoppable as he continues this irresistible charge through the field. So 6th place now for Mortheo, and Tommy Knight in the Ginetta. That's a Class 3 car. He's not going to have the power of the straight line, so the Mosler whizzes past again. You only score championship points within your category, though, and Tommy Knight is still 2nd in class behind the Tom Howard number 57 Moss Motorsport BMW. Roland Hopkins aboard the VW Golf in Class 5. We've got Matthew Boyce to get in. They've had a troubled couple of rounds. A non-start at Silverstone, an on-finish yesterday in the rain at Brands Hatch, and it means they are trailing by 1 point, this team. Brad Everson and Sean Cooper this weekend driving for Track Focused in the Porsche. Sean is also the team boss and the man very much involved in the running of the car. There's your new race leader then, Stefano Lini in the Raw Motorsport Radical. They've only done the last couple of rounds of Britcar, but they made an immediate impact. Can they get their first victory in the category as Javier Morthio reels in Tom Howard now? The Class 4 BMW is no match again for the Mosler in a straight line, so that now puts him up into 4th place. Javier Morthio and Manuel Cintrano, who make the long trip across from Spain to compete in these Britcar meetings. Javier now in his 25th season of racing, and you can see just how good he is. On board with Tommy Knight, who is overtaken here by the flying Scotsman, Callum Lockie, who has charged through from near the back of the grid after a disappointing race yesterday. The results of which determine the grid for this one. So Callum Lockie now up into 6th place overall. That also puts him up to 2nd place in the sprint category for those just doing the first 50 minutes of the race, behind Tom Howard in the BMW. Their 3rd in the category is Ed Moore in the Top with Motorsports Ginetta G50. Ian Marmaduke Hall have had lots of bad luck mid-season, otherwise they might have been going for the sprint category title as well. On board with Javier Morthio in the Neil Garner Motorsport Mosler. There is 3rd place just ahead, the green BMW overtaken by the Class 1 car. So that is Javier up to 3rd place overall now, moving ahead of Mike Moss, who's doing a fantastic job in the Class 3 car. And as you can see, plenty of back markers for the quicker cars to deal with now on this short 1.2 mile circuit. There is number 5, 2nd overall for Bonamy Grimes, coming up to lap the Aston Martin of EDF Motorsports, Mal Sandford, but he gets stuck there behind him, and Dave Bennett in the Porsche unlaps himself. It's 3 abreast, and that's allowed Javier Morthio to get the pounce on him as they go up the Cooper Straight. There he is, fully alongside, right-hander coming up, and Javier Morthio is now braving it around the outside, trying not to run into the back of Dave Bennett's Porsche. It's going to be a tight squeeze, breathe in, and just about gets through and gains the place. So fantastic driving from Javier Morthio there, all without contact, but wretched luck with the back markers there, I'm afraid it was, for Bonamy Grimes. Here's a replay from Javier's point of view. Then to the Ferrari ahead, just gets stuck behind the Aston, then he's got a Porsche to the side, he's got nowhere to go, he loses all of his momentum. Javier grits his teeth, sticks to his line and makes the move. After the 100-mile-an-hour crash last night, Tom Barley and Team Hart doing a terrific job from 27th, that car now up to 16th place. Also carving his way through the field, number 7, Callum Lockie, who is getting onto the tail now of the number 18 Moss Motorsport BMW. So these two are 4th and 5th overall. The BMW with less performance is a Class 3 car. That's a Class 1 sprint entry with Callum Lockie in the FF Course Run machine. Pulls out of the slipstream, draws alongside. He's going to have the right-hand line coming up at Paddock Hill Bend, and through he should go. Nice clean move. That Mike Moss was not going to fight it too hard, and that's then a change for 4th place. Fantastic looking car, this one. They had a bit of teething trouble with it in the first half of the season, but it is running really well here this weekend at Brands Hatch. Now there's Javier Morthio flashing his lights, absolutely on a charge here to try and get to the top of the field from 19th. Then he can see his quarry now, because there is the race leader just a couple of lengths in front of him, the Radical of Stefano Lini. The 2 Class 1 cars far their way up Hellwood Hill then, and this is it for the lead of the race. They are now nose to tail. Stefano Lini knows he's got company. And Lini might be slightly dismayed with just how quickly the Mosler has got itself onto the tail of his Radical. That said, Lini and Raw Motorsport have been struggling with overuse of fuel. Their fuel consumption rate has been very high in that Radical. It caused them to run out of fuel just before their pit stop at Silverstone. That really potentially cost them a race win. And so they've changed the mapping here, and they're a little bit down on power, but hopefully it means they'll just get away with the 1 pit stop. But the Brands Hatch Indy Circuit is a track which is pretty heavy on the fuel. So yes, on one hand he's trying to defend the lead of the race, but he's also got to get the car to the end of the race without an extra pit stop. And the Mosler is now having a look at the inside here on the way to Druids Corner, and he goes through for the lead of the race, but he locks his brakes and runs wide, deep into the corner, and back through comes Stefano Lini. Fantastic exchange there between the pair of them. So late on the brakes from Javier Morthio, did well to get round the corner, but he's lost a couple of lengths. Here's a replay on board with him. The Radicals just a little bit slow coming out onto Howard Hill. The door opened up, he went for it, but he couldn't slow the car down as the track gets colder and colder. As the night air comes in, he wrestled with the wheel. No traction control, no ABS on this Mosler. It's a very, very physical car to drive. So the two leaders flash their lights now as they carve their way through a couple of Ginettas. There's old Gagler cars just ahead as well. At the inside of Roland Hopkins' VW Golf, a huge closing speed there. Hopkins sensibly staying out of the way as they come up to Druids, and the Radical's gone to the inside, the Moser's gone to the outside of the traffic. Who's going to come out on top? It's going to be Javier Morthio. He's got the lead of the race here as they lap Ed Moore's Ginetta down the inside of Dave Bennett's Porsche. Leany gets stuck in between the two back markers and loses a bit more time out of Graham Hill Bend. Well, let's have a look at this from the exterior camera. This is super brave stuff from Javier Morthio. The longer route, more at risk, less grip, but he just saw the traffic, saw the opportunity and went through. Wow, what a move that was. Back in the pits, we've got driver changes in the sprint category. Number 25, Jacob Jackson had the spin on the outlap, but they're back up into the top 5 in class. The championship leaders in sprint are in the pits as well. Number 17, Track Focused. Bonnet up, I'm afraid, on one of the endurance class cars. That's the Jeff Steele run BMW. And there is the Team Hard Toyota Aventus. That's the XBTCC car of Jake Hill going out, driven this weekend by Ben Wallace and Jesse Chamberlain. There's the overall Endurance Championship leader, Whit Gamsky. He's clawed back a few places, up to 11th, but still only 3rd in class. Might not be good enough to hang on to the championship lead if results go against him. Synchro Motorsport leading Class 5 as Alan James hands over to Martin Byford. And news that a damaged power steering hose is the cause of the dramas for the Jeff Steele BMW. Right, the very rapid Sean Cooper is now ensconced in the Porsche Cayman for Track Focused. Callum Lockyer has given way to David Mason in the car which leads the sprint category, but David will not be as rapid as Callum, and looking for a 3rd place overall in the sprint category. Number 15, Edmore and Marmaduke Hall taking over for the 2nd stint. Their first time out for the McLaren, glimpse of the bright purple number 14 machine of Neil Garnham. Just outside the top 6 overall then for Tommy Knight, but he loses a place to Jade Kruger, who's come all the way from the back of the field in the number 22 Ginetta after a couple of offs in yesterday's wet night race. Jade flying along in the Black Mamba Racing car. David Mason about to be released back out then. In terms of the Sprint Championship, Track Focused, 2nd in their class. They could do ideally with winning it. The black Porsche there of Dave Bennett and Marcus Fothergill leading the same class, Class 3, within the sprints category. But the good news for Sean Cooper and Brad Neverson is that their main rivals for the title are not winning their class either, the VW Golf of RM Motorsport. There's a welcome addition to the entry. It's Sam Dehaan in the TCR spec Audi, run and prepared beautifully by the ultra-successful Barwell Motorsport team. Ollie Taylor, coming towards the end of his stint, has done a great job in a TCR spec car as well. The Seat run by Maximum Group, which has been proven to be a very good endurance car so far. We're almost at the 50-minute mark, so that will be the end of the sprint category race. There's the 57 BMW, which went so well at the start of the race and ran in the top 6 overall, but it has dropped back down the order out of the top 3 in the sprint category. There's your overall race leader, Javier Morthio in the Mosler. That's now lapped everybody except for the 2nd place Radical of Stefano Leany, who, don't forget, we think is trying to preserve fuel in that car so they don't have to have an extra splash and dash and just make the one refuelling stop when they make their driver change. 3rd place a lap down now, the number 5 Ferrari. That's the Class 2 car, Bonamy Grimes, doing an excellent job as ever under the tutelage of his teammate Johnny Molam, and with aspirations of heading to Le Mans one day. Right, you're on board with Tommy Knight, gunning for the championship, the overall title in endurance, and now closing in on the Class 3 leader, the number 18 Moss Motorsport BMW. He overtakes it on the way into Druids Corner, and that could be a hugely significant move for the championship. But here comes the number 7 Callum Lockyer, David Mason Ferrari to cross the line and win the sprint category. While all that is going on, the 2-hour endurance drivers are making their pit stops. They're only halfway into their race. Witkowski is the first one to pit. He's going to hand over to the very quick Ross Wiley with a GT and Porsche Carrera Cup experience. Can they hold on to win the overall title? They've got an 8-point lead. There to take second place in the sprint category, Marmaduke Hall and Ed Moore, with a fine end to the season after a tough couple of rounds. But here comes Sean Cooper. He's managed to get ahead of the number 69 Marcus Fothergill Porsche, so he takes the class victory and he also takes the sprint category championship alongside Brad and Rick Neverson. And there is the RM Motorsport VW Golf of Matt Boyce. A valiant effort, but they are just going to miss out on the title by 2 points. So confirmation of the sprint class results. Third place to Lucas Nanetti and Jacob Jackson after their tricky start to the race, with Wallace and Chamberlain 4th and James and Byford in 5th. And there's confirmation of the final standings with luck. Just 3 points between the top 3 teams in the end. Edmore and Marmaduke Hall will rue their bad luck mid-season. There's Rob Weldon about to hop into his Radical. Second place overall, taking over from Stefano Lini. And you've also got about to go out now Ross Wiley. That's the car that leads the overall championship, but only by a handful of points. Witkowski having had a steady first stint in these cold conditions. The nightfall now very much upon us. So Rob Weldon about to go out there, hoping to get that car to the end of this 2-hour race without coming in for another fuel stop. Right on board Ollie Taylor's Seat. You can see it's almost completely dark out there now. But for the sprint category entries, they've now finished their 15-minute race. And we can catch up with Marmaduke Hall, who along with Ed Moore and Tockwith Motorsport came within 3 points of winning the championship after coming second today.
You've had some bad luck in the middle of the season, haven't you?
Yeah, we had a couple of DNFs at Donington and engine troubles, and Silverstone last round we had an electrical fault, and so yeah, it's been a bit of a troubled season, but it's been good fun. You get lots of seat time, and for what you're paying for, it's brilliant value for money, and it's a very nice championship. We felt very at home this year in our first year in it, and yeah, it's just been brilliant racing.
Another talented youngster racing for Tockwith Motorsport is ex-junior saloon car racer Lucas Nanetti.
We've had a good run this weekend. Had a little iffy with Jake, my co-driver, who spun on the first lap, but he recovered well. He drove back up. He got to 5th in class, and the guy who was 4th was miles away. So I had to do a lot of work to get back up. Eventually got there, but it's my second time out in the car, so it's not too bad for a normal weekend.
Our race leaders have made their driver change, so it's now Manuel Cintrano aboard the Mosler, making his way through the darkness into the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend, but he's being caught rapidly by the Radical of Raw Motorsport, driven by Rob Weldon. So a long way to go in the race, and it looks like that race lead might come under threat. Makes his way then into the right-hander at McLaren, disc brakes glowing. There's the 22 Black Mamba Ginetta, which has risen up from the back of the field. Right on his tail though, it is the 285 Team Hard Ginetta, and there's contact between the two of them. Onto the grass for the Black Mamba car. The grass is wet, so the back end spins around. Meanwhile, back in the pit, Sam Alpas is about to take over the Jeff Steele BMW from Clint Bardwell, who had some problems with the car, but went very well in the early stages.
The start was amazing. Yeah, I think we was up to 8th within a couple of laps, which was good. Just got to follow the gaps really, you know, and try and get through and be careful. It was good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Bit of a drama midway through the session when we pinched a power steering pipe, lost our power steering, fluid was everywhere, so we had to come in and repair the pipe. But the car's really, really good.
It's tough to get to the right setup this weekend because we started on Friday with a dry, then we had wet yesterday, then it was sort of greasy this morning for warm-up.
Yeah, when it's unpredictable like that, you can go too far in each direction, and I think we did that. Sam got out in the testing and suggested a change, which would have made sense, but I think we just went too far. So we had to get it back, and then the conditions change, and then you're on to wets and all this kind of stuff, but that's racing, isn't it?
Out on track, we've got a new race leader. Rob Weldon has found a way past the Mosler of gentleman racer Manuel Cintrano. He's been busy catching him up to the tune of 3 or 4 seconds a lap. In an ideal world, Javier Morcillo, as the pro driver, would have liked to have handed his teammate Manuel Centrano a much healthier advantage. But of course, he did have the small matter of trying to work his way through from 19th on the grid first, and did a terrific job to get the lead of the race in the first place. It's back up to third place overall now for MJC Furlonger, leading the championship, remember. Ross Wiley second in class, leading class 2, but down to fourth place overall. That's Johnny Molam in the FF Course Ferrari. Then in fifth place, we've got the BMW of Moss Motorsport with Kevin Clark behind the wheel now. And still running in sixth position, it is the number 22 Black Mamba Ginetta of Jade Kruger and Andy Dimitru. There is the 285 Ginetta for Team Hard, and he comes together with the McLaren on the way into Druids. Contact for the championship hopefuls, damage to the front of the car. Darren Lewis right up in the air. Here's a replay on board with Darren. The McLaren was slow to exit Paddock Hill Bend. The door opened up, but he wasn't quite there. Then the door closed and he hits the back of the McLaren. That's an expensive knock. Around he goes, and it's the second bit of contact for the 285 Team Hard car. So riding right up there. They've got to hope there's not severe damage to the underside of that car. I think the McLaren might be getting away with it. Not sure though about Darren Lewis. And all the while, the number 24 Team Hard car, now driven by Simon Rudd, is continuing to work its way up from the back of the grid. It's now in 8th place overall. There is another Class 3 car. It's Matty George now behind the wheel of the Whitebridge Motorsport Aston Martin. And also the top 10, number 95, the Seat Leon of Stuart Lines, the British touring car team boss, who enjoyed some really strong results when they had Josh Cook in the car at the start of the season in their Ford Focus. But the Seat going really well here for the second day in succession, or I should say second night in succession. 10th place for Jake Rattenbury and Mike Seller in the number 39 Porsche 911. A spin, it looks like there's been for the 72 Whitebridge Aston, which is lit up like a Christmas tree, but it gets going again, no harm done. Right, Darren Lewis has come into the pits. He's pointed to the front left corner. Could be a puncture. Certainly there could be damage to bodywork, maybe suspension. So is this the end of their title aspirations? Heading into the closing stages, Raw Motorsport, Rob Weldon and co-driver Stefano Lini looking for their maiden Britcar victory. But second place is still up for grabs. It's the Moser still there, Manuel Centrano doing a good job. Laps behind, but in fourth place it's number 5 Ferrari. The one to watch though is this Ferrari, flames spitting out of the exhaust of Ross Wiley, who is on an absolute charge here to try and win his class and absolutely make sure of the championship title. And this is the battle, meanwhile, for 5th place overall and for the Class 3 lead. Simon Rudd in the 24 Ginetta from the back of the field has almost caught up to Andy Dimitru now. Darren Lewis has gone back out to try and get a finish, having been in the pits for a couple of laps, but he's understeering wide and he's onto the grass and heading for the barriers. A big hit there, and that car just understeered off. I think that is probably due to the damage he picked up in that incident with this car, the McLaren of Neil Garner, when they came together up at Druid. So a sad end to the race for Darren Lewis. He'll be okay. These cars are built very strong, but he just won't turn in here, look, and he slides wide, begins at McLaren, through clearways, on the grass, and got nowhere to go except in the barriers. Final lap of the race for Rob Weldon. He's almost there. They came very close to winning at Silverstone in their first weekend in Britcar. What's this? More drama. Another Ginetta. It's Simon Rudd off into the barriers. He's had contact, I think, with the 22 Andy Dimitru car. Meanwhile, the leader comes past to go into the final corner on the final lap of this Britcar into the night race. It's been a dramatic final few laps here, but no dramas whatsoever for Rob Weldon and Stefano Lini, who take their maiden Britcar victory here at Brands Hatch. And here is the 43 Ross Wiley Ferrari, and he's second. He's found a way past on the closing lap of the Mosler. So it's going to be a class win. It's going to absolutely guarantee the 2017 Dunlop Endurance Championship title. Well, this race meeting never fails to deliver. Lini and Weldon win. Gapsky and Wiley second, win the championship. Then Trano and Morfeo hang on for third. Grimes and Molan with another class win in fourth. Dimitru and Kruger fifth after that late race contact. Moss and Clark round out the top 6. And there are two very happy men. Stefano Lini, high fives Rob Weldon. And there'll be great joy here as well. Ross Wiley and Whit Gapsky are your 2017 Dunlop Endurance champions. In the end, they win by 9 points from the Team Hard Ginetta of Darren Lewis and Tommy Knight, and a bitterly disappointing weekend. And third place in the championship for Simon Rudd and Tom Barley.
The car was great all weekend. We didn't test on Friday, so we weren't sure what it was going to be like in the dry, but yeah, no, it's fantastic all the way through. It's just a managed stint on my part. Steph handed over and done his bit, and yeah, we just sort of brought it home.
We only got 2 warm-up laps, and the tyres were brand new, and it's very cold out here today, so it was really struggling to get the tyre temperature, but I knew I needed to get in front of the 3 cars in front of me for the first sort of 2 or 3 laps, and once I did that, it was a case of just trying to get through traffic safely. I knew the Moser was catching me, so it was just a case of trying to get through safely. I did get tangled in a couple of back markers towards the end of my stint, but luckily caused no damage and managed to get the car back so Rob can go and finish it off.
And a flawless weekend from Track Focused gives them the sprint category title.
Nobody knows better than you what a big team effort this is.
Yeah, massively. Car's been brilliant all year. The team's been brilliant. No mistakes, and yeah, the consistency's paid off.
And Brad, this is you coming to your first season in Britcar, and you've already reached the heights now. Where are you going to go from here?
F1 probably. I'm already in talks with Mercedes, so no, it's literally a lot of it is down to Sean, the guys, my dad especially. Like, he's absolutely smashed it this season. His driving's come on absolutely loads. Yeah. He's had himself a few wins, all sorts. Like, he's been coming home trophies every other week, and you know, massive thanks to him for getting us in the position to actually come here and win it.
And it could have gone any way, but Whit Gamsky and Ross Wiley are your 2017 Dunlop Endurance Champions.
We just, treat it like any other race. Focus on the race itself, and the championship will sort itself out. And that's the approach I've taken for the last 12 years, and thankfully it paid off in the end.
And you seem to have had a really good rapport with the team and with Whit this year.
Yeah, it's been great, and like I said before, I've been fortunate enough to race in a lot of high-profile championships, high-profile teams, but this is by far the most enjoyable. It's it's like going racing with your mates at the weekend, and we've got a nice big egg cup to take home. So a few celebrations along the way.
Thanks to everybody that's helped out, all the team, and they're all sort of mostly part-timers except a few. And Ross's driving is immense. It was great. We couldn't wish for another, for more, better results. It was great, and coming back again after all these years, it's really good.
Huge congratulations then to our 2017 champions after what's been an enthralling season. Thanks for watching.